welcome to the Trainwell podcast, inspiring you to move more, get stronger, and have fun. I am your host, Darian, along with my co-host, Joey. On today's episode, we are talking to Hallie Burke about all things powerlifting. I really geeked out on this episode because I just love talking about lifting weights. I think Joey felt the exact same way. We break down with her what is powerlifting. We break down some powerlifting terms. We go through the main three lifts of powerlifting: squat, deadlift, bench press. We do some really fun overrated, underrated at the end there. And I think you're going to learn a lot from this episode. Hallie is a certified personal trainer with a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition and Dietetics. Her diverse background spans strength and conditioning, mental health, and her own achievements as a nationally qualified bodybuilder and a top 100 ranked junior powerlifter. This unique combination of experience has given her a deep understanding of what it takes to succeed both physically and mentally. Hallie is passionate about helping others bridge the gap between physical and mental health, emphasizing the powerful connection between the two in order to achieve high-level performance.
Dear listener, we thank you so much for listening. We want to remind you to always get in touch with us, to send us an email or to click the link in the show notes, and to always subscribe to our channel. We hope you enjoy the show as much as we did with our powerlifter, Hallie.
Your cherry and pit?
My cherry, I was thinking about this because I listened to the episodes before we were asking this. So I was like, what am I going to say? I don't know if it's silly. For Hanukkah, I got a Nintendo Switch and I really love it. So I've been playing that a lot and it just brightens my day, especially where I live. It gets cold and dark really fast. So I play Animal Crossing now, and I know everybody's been playing that for years, but I just had the opportunity to play it, and I don't know, exploring that has really made me happy. I was thinking about anything else that was fun, but I was like, that's all I can think about. But when I'm done with working, I'm like, all right, I'm going to play Animal Crossing. That's been really fun to me.
I love it. That's awesome. I don't know what that game is, but I can...
It's literally you're just a little guy and you get an island and all you do is build houses and invite people to come to your island and decorate things. And it's really slow. You can only do a certain amount of stuff in the particular day because it goes in real time. So you can only do so much on one day and you have to come back to it tomorrow and play it. So I've been having fun with it this week because it's every single day you're building up your little town and new people keep coming and you just make it however you want. It's the most silly little cute game, but it's very relaxing.
Oh, that sounds
Can you build
nice.
a gym? Can you build a West Side barbell in there?
There is actually the first villager guy that came. He's a bear and his name's Teddy and he's obsessed with weightlifting. And whenever you talk to him, he's do some squats. There is that character. So I'm wondering if later I can build something for him because I just happened to get the little guy. Maybe everybody does. I don't know. But he's an obsessed with working out little guy.
I love that for you. And what's your pit?
I was thinking about this too. As I said, I live in Connecticut and I live in the woods and it's pretty rural. We don't have sidewalk. We don't have street lights. It's out there. And it's also to say we have heat, but not really. Because I think I'm not from the East Coast. So I don't know. I know Connecticut specifically, we use oil, not natural gas to heat the house and get hot water and stuff. So the house is really cold and we have a wood pellet stove that we put wood pellets in to heat the house, but it broke. So, and we don't want to fill up the oil tank because it costs a lot to do that and it's a whole thing. So we're trying to hold off on doing it. I have a blanket on and I've just been sitting in the cold house, just dealing with it for the past few days. But I think it's getting fixed. But yeah, I've just been very cold.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So Hallie, kick us off. You're a power lifter, badass, right? You're going to be humble, but we're going to just say it. You're a badass. So you train at this hybrid gym.
Yeah.
But really just walk us down how you got into fitness and how you found powerlifting.
Yeah. It feels like a crazy story, but I don't know. I like was interested in weightlifting, I guess, when I was in high school. It's kind of when it started. I had my own experience with eating disorders, disordered eating, all that stuff in middle school, high school. And I remember very vividly, like 8th grade, being on the elliptical, like, I'm so tired of this. Like, this is miserable, like the worst thing ever. I didn't necessarily start weightlifting at that point, but I was like, this sucks. And I remember I had like maybe freshman year of high school, like a boyfriend that was a lacrosse player or something who was like, want to come to the gym? Because our high school was connected to the community center. You could like walk through a door. So the like community gym was there, and everybody would like go after school, like all the guys, especially the athletes when it was like off season or whatever. So like, you want to come to the gym? I was like, okay. And I think I went once and I was like, I don't know. But then a few years later, again, I don't remember why, but I had like some male friends that were wrestlers and football players that were like, hey, you should come to the community center after school with us, because that's what like everybody did. So I went and I was like, this is really cool. And my parents, I feel very fortunate. My parents are very active. They would also go to the community center. So it was like a thing. Everybody went. My mom used to run like marathons and stuff, so she'd be running. My stepdad's like a gym dude, so he'd be in there so they could like take me home after. So my parents were super supportive of it. And then after that, the boys would kind of show me what to do, and I got super obsessed with it on my own. So I remember being like, it's so cool coming from a place of I was so obsessed with like just doing cardio all the time and not eating and all those things to now, whoa, it's so cool to like lift weights and feel cute in these outfits and like get stronger. And when I started going, it's become much more normal for women to be in the gym now, especially young women. But when I was going, I remember very vividly, I was the only girl like in my whole high school that was like going to the gym lifting weights. I graduated with a class of 1,000 and I was the only one. I made a fitness Instagram before it was cool. The school newspaper interviewed me about it because it was like a thing that was not happening. I started going to the gym. I worked in the spring of senior year. I had a like restaurant job. So in the morning before school, I would go to the gym at like 5 a.m. and then go to school. I would wear my gym leggings, like Gymshark. That was before that was cool. So the boys would make fun of me. So I was going to the gym and wearing Gymshark leggings. So it's so funny to say that now, because now that's like so normal. And I don't know why I was so obsessed with it, but I was. So I started going so early in the morning. Long story short, when I went to college, I went to Ohio State. And as I mentioned, like West Side Barbell, a lot of powerlifting is really big in Ohio. So Columbus and Ohio State was a super like fit, active campus. Like we had multiple really nice gyms. We had personal training staff. We had a powerlifting club. Like it was pretty common in college for like people to be at the gym and lifting weights and stuff. So I got involved with a community of friends and older kids when I was a freshman in college that were super, super into lifting and bodybuilding, powerlifting. And it just kind of took off from there because that became my friend group in college. That's all to say, I got into bodybuilding first and I competed when I was in college in bodybuilding. And I had like an aversion to the powerlifters at school because I was like, I'm like fit and like lean and they're not. Like I was so against it because, you know, I feel like there's sometimes a rivalry there. Then some stuff happened. I stepped away from bodybuilding. I appreciate it a lot, but I heard in like earlier podcasts, you guys were talking about this. I feel like for me, with the background that I had with eating and nutrition, it was not the best. And there was definitely some problems there and things I was not figuring out and handling. And it led to this huge explosion, which kind of led me to powerlifting though, because I missed the aspect of competing and having a goal. And I love working really hard for something. So it felt cool to step into something where like your body wasn't the focus. It was just what your body can do. It felt a lot more empowering for me to step into that, especially when I was going through this transition of feeling really lost and uncomfortable with myself after bodybuilding. And again, being in Columbus, there was so many resources for powerlifting. Like you can go to any gym and there's a ton of really high level powerlifters there just from where it was. So I fell into it. I met a woman at the gym because I signed up for my first powerlifting competition. I didn't have a coach. I didn't like know anything. I've always naturally had a lot of strength. Like I kind of am wondering why I never did powerlifting first. Like I squatted 225 for the first time when I was 17, like at the gym, the community center. I benched 135 for the first time when I was 18. Like it just kind of like had felt pretty natural. So I was just kind of like, I can figure it out. This woman at the gym saw me and was like, hey, I used to be like a power lifter, like a high professional one. Can I give you some tips? Like, you're not really doing this right. It's like, sure. That's all to say. She handled me for my first meet. She's like super great. We still keep in touch. And she brought me to see my first powerlifting meet. It was the Women's Pro-Am, which happens every year in Cincinnati. Laura Phelps puts it on, which is like, she's wonderful. I've worked with her a lot. She's one of like Louis' girls back in the day, but it was an all-female powerlifting meet, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. It was the first time she's still my friend, Leah Reichman. She squatted 900 pounds at that meet, and I was like, this is like literally insane. She introduced me to these people in Connecticut that were like a very high-level powerlifting gym. That's all to say, after I graduated college, I came here, I worked with them, I did a few meets, all this stuff. So it really like tumbleweeded, but I really just feel like it was where I was. I was super fortunate to be around really high level, smart people and like obsessed with learning more about it and working under them because I know they were smart and they all have the numbers to back it up too, especially being around like strong women too. Like the numbers I've seen women put up are like unbelievable. Like seeing Leah squat that in person was like insane.
Yeah, God, it's so freaking impressive, so empowering. Of course, the thing that stands out to me is how many of us trainers, women in the world, people in fitness, come from a background of eating disorders and disordered eating. It's so common. If you're listening to this and you are feeling like alone in that struggle, you're not. It is so common, and just people are scared to talk about it. So that's like number one. But number two is how common it is that you get into fitness in this really kind of toxic, disordered way, but it leads you to like the best, healthiest thing you've ever done for yourself. And it happens to so many. That's how I got into lifting as well. It's like, it's so funny, that stupid, horrible phrase where people go like, just remember, skinny feels better than anything tastes, or whatever that stupid phrase is. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it's better than skinny is lifting more than anybody else. You know, it's like the best feeling. It's so empowering. You feel so capable, so strong, and you really start to prioritize that in your life. I'm curious, like that, I mean, what tips would you give to like girls in college who are maybe struggling with disordered eating, but it's getting them into the gym? How do they get started just in like doing powerlifting? Because it is intimidating. Because I remember the powerlifting gym at my college gym, it was all bros, and I was like, hey, I opened the door, I'm like, no thank you, walked right back out like, no, this isn't for me. So what should they do to get started?
Wait, I want to say something real quick, Hallie.
Do it.
Darian, this wasn't in college. This girl was squatting 2 wheels in high school. She was benching a plate in high school, so let's get that.
Barely. I like look back, I still have those like videos that I did, and I was like, okay, like I don't know what that was, but it happened. Like it happened. I don't know if it was good. That's a really good question. I feel like, again, I was super lucky on campus, on our powerlifting team specifically. We had a lot of really strong women. Like even now, some of the most like ranked raw powerlifting females are from Ohio State's powerlifting team. And I think they were really big on like trying to get the girls to talk to other girls because they know that it's a super male dominated thing and can be really intimidating. So I had a lot of girls that were super helpful and wanted to help me there. And the men too, because they had all these strong girls, were very respectful towards new girls that were interested and like I never felt like embarrassed or ashamed around any of the guys because they were around so many other strong women that could like very easily outlift them. So like everybody was super respectful. I do remember feeling weird though, because it's like I had that on campus and stuff, but when you go to a school that big, especially like there's like 65,000 people there. And, you know, in college especially, it's like, oh, we want to be really skinny and small so we look good in our outfits and like guys and blah, 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 blah. And I did feel like weird because I was like, oh, well, I'm like bigger than them or I have more muscle. Like, I can't wear the cute little crop top. Like if I go out, I'm gonna look like weird, like, you know. But I think, I don't know, finding the community aspect was really, really important. And it is scary, and especially if there is a lot of like dudes and things. But I really wanted to learn, and I had to put myself out there to be like, hey, I'm gonna talk to them, I'm gonna ask. And again, any real lifter, especially like male powerlifter, anyone, they're not gonna like make you feel bad because you're a girl. They're not gonna make you feel embarrassed because of, oh, you're lifting this weight and they lift this. Like, they are very respectful and understanding, because even the time we're living in now, like I kind of feel like women's powerlifting is a lot more exciting than male powerlifting right now. There's women doing crazy stuff. That community aspect's big, but it's also like I've struggled. I very commonly felt like the oddball out when I was in college lifting, and a lot of other girls weren't. I mean, I will also say I definitely never was like made fun of it. Guys would like, and not that that's the reason why you do it, but like if a guy asks you like, oh, how much can you bench? And you say to them, they're like, whoa. Like, I don't know. They, I think it impressed them and scared them a little bit, but like in a way that I wanted it to be, where I was like, yeah, like I do have this. And I remember a female powerlifter saying, she was like very muscular, and people were like, how do you feel confident wherever you are? And she's like, if I'm going to take up the most space in the room, because like just the way that I look, then I'm going to own it. Like, I'm already taking up this space. Like, I might as well just like make that mine. So I transitioned my thought into like, yeah, it is, you know, whatever, but it's also really cool. Most people are not doing this where I was at right then. So I feel like having that mindset shift too is helpful.
For sure. It feels good to be the strongest person in the room, I think.
Women, gosh,
Yeah.
women need to hear this, because especially newbies, you know, like people, because the old adage out there is like, I need to be skinny and slim, and muscle is scary, or when I lift weights, I'm going to bulk up.
Oh, yeah,
So
totally.
what do you say to that myth? How do you speak to that? Like, because there's women listening who are like, oh, I'm not gonna touch a barbell because I'm gonna get, my thighs are gonna be thicker and blah blah. Like, what do you do that?
Like, when I'm picturing them saying that, I always say, I say this to my clients now, like, I promise you, you are not going to get bulky. Like, if you really wanted to do that, you're not just going to like randomly wake up and be like, oh my gosh, how did I end up here? That has to be a very intentional thing that you are doing, and training a certain way and eating a certain way and sleeping a certain way and like doing all these things. That doesn't just happen. Like, it's a very intentional process. So it's something where it's like, I know there's still that rhetoric out there, but it's definitely not just happening. If you wanted to get that way, you would really have to try. Just picking up a weight isn't going to do that. And I mean, even think about it, like in our normal life, we're just kind of picking stuff up, moving it around. Like, we are kind of lifting weights just in normal life, but it's not getting you bulky. I don't know. I used to have a sweatshirt that said, I just want to tone, that I would like wear around, that I don't think people knew if it was like a joke or not. But I wore that in college too, which now looking back, I'm like, that was really annoying of me to do and like not supportive. But I do think it's like, you would have to really try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Like, I do, I understand where women are coming from when they say that. I really do get it. And at the same time, I'm like, and what is so wrong with being bulky?
Exactly, that too. I'm like, I mean, I like it. Maybe my perspective is like weird now, but like when I look in the mirror and I see like muscle or something, I'm like, that's so cool. Like, that looks good. Or if I see a woman in public that like, I can tell she works out, I'm like, she looks awesome. Like, that's so cool. I don't know, but maybe, I don't know if other people feel that way, but I feel like it's awesome.
It is awesome.
Getting strong is a new fat loss.
Yeah, that's what I feel like.
Getting muscle is a new fat loss. Maybe we should back up and define for our listener what powerlifting is too, Hallie. What the heck is powerlifting?
Powerlifting, and wait, also, because you said a few things I want you to define, is raw. What does it mean? So powerlifting, what does it mean to be raw powerlifting? And then you also said she handled me, and I want it for our listener to clear up what that means.
Yes. Okay. So powerlifting, it's like a competition, a competitive sport. It's basically just your 3 like compound lifts: bench, squat, deadlift. You want to try to get the biggest, highest number that you possibly can. And you go into a competition, you have 3 tries at each. So you do 3 squats, 3 bench, 3 deadlift. And at the end, they'll take the highest number of each one and they'll add it up and you get a total. So like your highest squat, your highest bench, your highest deadlift added up, that's your total. They use that to see like who wins, who's the best. If you want to get super complicated, there's a calculation that people will do that like calculates your body weight and your relative strength. It's called DOTS. And people will use that at powerlifting meets too, because if you think of it like a woman that's like 200 pounds is probably going to be able to lift more than a woman that's like 130 pounds, but maybe they do that calculation and they figure out with that dot number that the woman that's smaller and lifting less, her relative strength is stronger than the bigger woman that lifted more. So that's kind of how like you can see if you win competitions or not too, or kind of see your relative strength. Raw powerlifting is like, there's certain equipment you can use in powerlifting. So raw is like kind of your most basic, try to be like as no equipment as possible, except that's kind of changing a little bit. Or I don't know, sometimes raw gets a little not like that. But you think like you can use knee sleeves, you can use a lifting belt, you can use like wrist wraps, but you can use like deadlift socks, but that's pretty much it. If you competed in wraps, it's the same as raw, but there are these lifting wraps that you wrap around your knees, which can help you kind of squat more. And then there's geared powerlifting, whereas like it gets super technical and complicated. There's like squat suits that you wear that can help you lift really, really heavy, but they are really technical. And if like one thing's off, or if you weigh a pound more than you did when you had your squat suit made, it's going to throw the whole thing off. So there's different like levels of it too. So you can be in competitions for all different things. And then handling. So basically when you're on like a meet day, you can have, sometimes it's like your coach. My coach has handled me in the past. It's like they are telling the judges, hey, Hallie's squat attempt 1, she wants this weight. Hallie's squat attempt 2 is this weight. They're telling the judges that, so you don't have to worry about it, because it'd be a lot if you try to figure that out. And they're hopefully like helping you strategize too. Okay, hey, my first squat was a little bit rocky. Maybe let's only go up this much. Hey, that one felt really good. Let's go up a lot. They'll help you strategize. They just kind of take care of you the whole day, because there's a lot of moving parts, and that would be really tough to do on your own. Like get you food if you want. I don't know, help you with all the stuff. They literally handle you, because if you had to do that all alone, it would be like very tough to try to lift as much as you can and then also figure out all the stuff too.
Yeah, those are great definitions. So I want to know, because like for me, I've been lifting for years and years and years, and kind of just casually, like I've run a Wendler 531. I've tried some other programs, did some other cycles. I was into CrossFit. I've definitely dedicated myself in the past to being like, okay, I want to bring up my squat and deadlift, and I'm not really in a bench, I'll be honest with you. But, you know, I've thought in the past, like, maybe I should try a competition. And I just am like, no, it's too scary. I'm not ready.
Scared.
Yeah, I am scared. And it's like very dedicated. Like you really have to go like, I'm taking it from casual, I work out and lift, to like, okay, I'm dedicating myself to increasing these numbers. Like, how do you make that transition if someone is just pondering kind of like, okay, I've been lifting, I feel pretty strong. Like how do they take it to that next level?
I've had a few clients ask me this, and I say they've asked me that too about like bodybuilding. How do you go from like a casual lifter to like, I want to be a bodybuilder? And I think whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, any sort of like competition, it kind of is the same thing. I feel like I jumped into everything head first without thinking about it. And looking back, now that I haven't competed in a while, I'm like, wow, I did not realize how much that actually took, because I just like did it all and was like, woo, this is awesome. And in my opinion too, if you're gonna compete, I know some people want to compete like just to say they did it, or like to be their best self, whatever. And maybe it's the people that I'm around, but in my head, I'm like, if I'm going to compete, I'm doing it to be the absolute best I can be and to win. Like, that's what I want to do it for. So if I am in a competition prep or something, I'm not going to be like, well, it doesn't matter if I don't get sleep this night or do whatever. Like, I don't want to look back and be like, there was that one day where I could have done this better. So I think you have to really consider that. Like, there are just the aspects of health and wellness that if you want to take it to a competition level, they have to be dialed in. Your nutrition is a big one. A lot of people think like to be a power lifter, you can just like eat whatever and you work out. That's definitely not the case. That has to be dialed in. Like if you were just like eating McDonald's every day and then tried to like squat your heaviest, that probably wouldn't go well. Nutrition definitely has to be big, making sure you're fueling yourself correctly. Sleep has to be big. Your stress levels have to be managed. Like all of those things where it's like, if you have a rough night of sleep or something, and then you go into the gym the next day and you're like, not my best lift, like whatever. It's fine if you're like a casual lifter, but if you're trying to be a power lifter, it's way less fine, because that's going to affect a day of training, which is going to affect the outcome. So it is like you have to make a sacrifice. Like you can't stay up late to hang out with your friends or go out to eat whatever with them, because you need to make sure you're getting your rest and you're eating your meal so you can wake up and go to the gym and have a good training session. It all has to revolve around that training session and trying to make anything external going on not affect that training session. So it's just like, I don't know, I think back when I was competing and pretty much my day was like all revolving around how do I make sure that this training session goes well today and helps me improve this outcome. And now it's much more flexible, because that's not really how I'm training, but I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration. Like it's not just like, let me just do this, you know?
If you want to take it to the next level, you really have to like know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. And I think too, like when I was doing it in college, especially, I know for me that meant like, you know, in college, typically, even now as you're older, like going out to the bar or something with your friends, like that's not something I was doing ever. But that's because like that's not helping you whatsoever towards your performance goal. And that's kind of a sacrifice that you had to make. And at the time, like that was a no-brainer to me. I was totally fine with it. I didn't feel, I mean, I guess left out. A little left out. I didn't really feel left out though, because that was my goal and that's something I was willing to do. But it's like little stuff like that where you have to think about, hey, that's something you have to give up. And if you don't, like, you could still do it, but you're not going to be the best. And then you're putting all this money into something and it's kind of like wasted, I guess, you know? So it's like little stuff like that people don't think about.
The value of just competing in itself is going to make you sharp. Having that date on the calendar is going to make you do some things that just have some discipline. But Hallie, I want to go back real quick, if I may, to you started talking, you know, female powerlifting is really big. And there's another myth out there that women just cannot be strong and that women are not as strong as men. But in my experience, I would say that women are pound for pound as strong and if not more athletic because of mobility than men. Would you agree?
Yes, fully. I mean, if you look at some of the top powerlifters right now, like Hunter Henderson, for example, the people that's listening, they can look her up. She's like literally squatting 700 pounds. Like she's doing things that men could never do. There's Brianni Terry, who's like deadlifting 600 and meets like, those are numbers I have not heard a lot of men say before. And even myself, for example, I'm not lifting powerlifting numbers right now, but at my gym I'm at, it's kind of like a joke when we come in of like, oh, is Hallie gonna, like the guys in the gym, like, oh, is Hallie, who do you think's gonna be stronger today? Hallie or Larry, like whatever. So it's even like, I hate to say it. I mean, all of the guys would agree because it is a running joke. Like they come into the gym and like I am their competition because they don't want the woman to outlift them. And that has happened multiple times at this point. So I don't know. I don't think that's true at all. Like genetically, men are gonna be stronger, but like women train really hard, and there are some genetic phenomenons that are just surpassing anything men have done.
I'm not gonna come live with you, Hallie. I'll be straight with you. I ain't gonna step in there. You mentioned too, you know, about like not having to always train super heavy now, right? Like there's a give and take with strength, because if you give your life to powerlifting, and I don't know if you know Bryce Lewis, but we used to train with Bryce Lewis here. He was in Colorado, and Bryce would always tell us that there's going to be a point at which strength is important, but maximal strength should not always be the carrot you're trying to chase.
Yes.
So how do you buffer that, and how do you manage that to know that I need to live for a lifetime and it may not be PRing every time I go to the gym?
Yeah, that's a really great question because I'm like still struggling with that. It's like you have to drop your ego so much because I was very used to walking into the gym and being like, I'm the strongest one here always. Like, no one can beat me. Like, I'm always gonna want to do this. And when you know you like can do something, but you're not doing it, like that does feel tough. So it's an ego thing. Like I've had to remind myself constantly, especially when the guys are like chirping a bit like, oh, is Hallie gonna do more than blah blah blah? But if my body is telling me like today is not the day, I mean, I mentioned an injury earlier. I got injured a few years ago, and I think a lot of that was like repeatedly just ignoring it and chasing numbers and not listening to my body. And I achieved a lot, but then I was like all messed up for a long time after. So that humbled me a ton because I had to learn like, okay, it was like really cool. I hit the numbers I hit, but there's not like a reason I need to do that all the time. Like it's not going to benefit me. And I still want to be strong. Like there's numbers I have in my head of like, I never want to dip below this. I'm always going to push myself to this. It doesn't need to, I'm not competing right now. Like it does not need to be there just because like I want to be a healthy, functional person right now. And I've had to just realize like, I've achieved what I've achieved. I'm proud of it. I don't need to prove that to everybody. I feel like it's an ego thing so much.
Humility goes a long way, huh?
Yeah.
So what would you say, like, because now there's people out there who are like, nah, I don't want to ever be a power lifter. But like, what can people take away from the sport of powerlifting or just like training? Maybe you can break down like, how do powerlifters train? And is this a way that like regular people who just want to be strong, is this a good method for them to train with?
Yeah, I think it's super helpful because again, you even think of like powerlifting training as like your bench, your squat, your deadlift, your accessory movements are trying to help you with the little mechanics that you're struggling with those movements, or it feels like, why do I care about having a heavy squat or something? But those three movements are like the three staple movements for a reason. Like they are just functional in life. Those are movement patterns you are doing often, especially like squatting. You think, hey, drop something on the floor, gotta go pick that up, making sure you don't mess up your back in that meantime. Like deadlifting, a lot of people are nervous about that. But again, like, hey, drop something on the floor. Maybe you need to, I'm looking at my bed right now. Maybe I need to lift up my bed and move it, and I need to pick it up from the bottom, move it over somewhere. You want to be able to do that stuff, like pick something up, whatever. All of those are really translatable movements that just in daily life you are doing some form of them. Like, do you need to have the heaviest 1 rep max squat ever? No. You think of like, I've worked in strength and conditioning. I worked with the Ohio State football team when I was there, and I talked to the strength and conditioning coaches. Those guys could probably 1 rep max like a crazy number. They're not going to do that because the risk of injury and needing to play on the field is so much higher. That's not helpful. So like, you definitely don't need to be doing that. I never advocate to my clients like, go lift as heavy as you possibly can all the time. But doing these movement patterns and incorporating them into your training, like it's going to be so helpful. And years down the line, especially as we age, when those movement patterns become even more difficult, like you just want to be a functional human that can just do things. Like I'm so grateful that I do these movements because I have just noticed in my daily life when I'm like doing different things, like I moved to Connecticut completely on my own. I am moved everything in myself. I made up everything. And that was like, wow, I'm really happy I lift and do these movements right now because I'm picking up every single box. And we keep our wood pellets that we heat the house in the basement. Hey, guess who's the one that's lifting them up, bringing upstairs, brought them all in? It's me. Like, and that's because I do those movements.
Hell, you're a confident son of a gun. I bet if you didn't have a pellet stove, you'd be out there chopping wood, carrying water every day of the week.
Yeah.
Can we get technical now? Because we're gonna pick your brain with some with your powerlifting knowledge, okay? And you don't have to go super crazy, but let's talk about the squat, deadlift, and the bench, okay? Or squat, bench, yeah, I guess. Give our listeners like 2 or 3 tips they can do, whether it's a barbell squat or a goblet squat or a RDL or whatever, or a hinge pattern. Let's start with squat.
I will see my clients having some like anterior pelvic tilt or like some sort of tilt where there's kind of like a curve in their lower back. And so I always try to explain to them like the initial positioning of when you're setting up for a squat, of like oftentimes there will be this like curve, like a C on their lower back, and then they're squatting down and it's causing like that quote unquote butt wink, like the butt to kind of come out in a weird way. You want to stack your hips and your pelvis. So it's kind of like, so instead of being kind of slanted out, you're stacked in. And I notice too, oftentimes my clients will kind of like, or people in general will like sink their chest in. So then they have their C shape, they're sticking out their lower back, they're synced in, their chest isn't upright. That initial positioning like pretty much makes or breaks your squat. I don't know, have the whole thing there.
Yeah, that's like really good. Those are great cues because like these moves are technical. I mean, like they're basic and functional, but like when you're trying to lift load, they are very technical. And I think it's important to really understand how to set up for these lifts. So let's go to deadlift now, because I think this one, maybe you would disagree with me, but I would think it's like the most technical of these lifts because, I mean, it is a very heavy lower back exercise. Like that is one of these like primary movers. But I also would love for you to break down not just like the technicality of the movement a bit, but like powerlifters tend to deadlift in sumo stance, which is like a wide stance. And from what I know, that's because it's less distance for the bar to travel. You can kind of lift more weight if you have less distance to go. However, personally, that's a very weird, awkward stance for me. I always kind of feel my knee pull, and I tend to deadlift in like a traditional stance with my feet under my hips. So can you like break down the lift, common errors, but also like the difference between these different stances?
Yes, yeah, because it's interesting you say that. It comes down to when there's like the debate of sumo versus conventional, whatever. It comes down to your leverages and like what's more optimal for you. And by leverages, I mean like your bodily anatomy, how your body is set up. So like me personally for powerlifting, I'm always pulling sumo. And that's because just like my legs are like short, my arms are short, my torso's short. Like the way that my body is set up works really well for sumo. Like that is a very natural stance for me to get into. Whereas conventional is like if you have like long arms, that works well. But I have, as I said, like shorter little kind of stubby-ish arms compared to the rest of my body. So it's really hard for me to get into that correct positioning, and it takes a lot more force for me to do, which you could say that's harder, but like if you're going to be in the powerlifting meet, you're going to want to do the one you're going to be stronger at. Like anyone would do that. So it's just different leverages. Like if somebody's maybe, a little bit taller, like I said, their limbs are a little bit longer, I feel like conventional works really well for them. They can hold that bar better. If you, again, maybe you're like me, I have like bigger legs too. It just like you can get into that position a lot more. So it just comes down to your stance and like what works best for you and how your body is set up. I don't necessarily think one has to be better than the other. And then you said kind of talking about like common issues that you see too, right?
Yeah, but really quick, that makes so much sense to me now why conventional is always the most natural stance for me, because I measured my wingspan because climbing is like a pretty natural thing to me, and like I have a really big reach. So I measured my wingspan, and I actually do have a longer wingspan than my height, which is like typically people have like the same. So I'm like, oh my God, that's probably why conventional feels so comfortable for me.
Yeah, like powerlifting works well for me, and like these lifts work well for me because I'm not short, but I'm like, my limb length and my torso is just like compact. So it works well. But like a really tall person, there's like a guy in the gym who's super tall and lanky, and he's really good at rowing and like super fast at rowing, but he's like not the best squatter. And I'm not super good at rowing, but I'm a better squatter. It's just like how your limbs are set up.
Yeah. So can you go into some of these like deadlift, like common errors, what people should look out for?
The back, again, it's that initial position. And if you're lifting like heavier weight that you should not be lifting, I feel like that with that initial position, and I've struggled with it a lot. I do like the conventional style of the deadlift now with the like normal style, not the sumo stance. And I struggled with that too. People will like try to get their bottom, they'll like be really, really low to the ground and then like come up. And I was taught, and it helps me a lot if you, again, I'm such a visual person, but kind of raising your hips up more. So not that you're in completely like, you think with a Romanian deadlift, when you're at the bottom of that, you're in the 90-degree angle almost, not completely there, but raising your hips up so you have more leverage to pull through from the hips and the legs and the glutes and the hamstrings. That helps a lot versus if you're trying to start super, super low to the ground. It also is going to keep your back a lot straighter. I mentioned the thing with keeping maybe like a little bit of a lighter weight if you're struggling there, because some like backgrounding is going to happen when you're lifting heavy to a certain extent. It's not necessarily bad. Some people it happens more than others and they feel fine. But if you're like lifting such a heavy weight that you're starting to strain your neck up, that's actually another one too. When you're lifting that too, people will like strain their neck up really high or low or all these things and with the spine, and that's like gonna throw your spine off so much. You want everything to be in alignment. A cue I was taught was like pretend you have a stuffed animal in like your neck and you don't want to smush the stuffed animal, but you don't want it to fall out either. So the whole time while you're deadlifting, like keep it and pretend it's locked up there. That's gonna help with everything else. Like people's spines will just go crazy because they're doing all those things when it gets too heavy.
Let me ask you this, Hallie. Does everybody have to be married to the barbell?
No, I don't think so. I say that to my clients right now too. Like there's times and place for everything. I do barbell work now. I do dumbbell work now. I mean, dumbbells are great for like stability. If you have like muscle imbalances, like for myself, when I pull sumo, I do like one hand under, one hand over. So because I've been doing that for so long, one side of my body, like my shoulder and like that back and lat is like super weird and like feels weird when I bench. And there are often times where like I will be able to bench up with one side and the other side's kind of compensating. So dumbbell bench is great for that because it's like working out those little imbalances. So it doesn't have to be. And again, like barbells don't work for everybody too. They might not have accessibility or, like some people's back, they can't support the barbell. We had some athletes when I was in strength and conditioning, their back couldn't support the barbell. So they were doing the belt squat. Exactly. So it doesn't have to be exactly how you see it.
Yeah. Would you get into like bench a little bit? Cause that's, for me, I never bench. I just not an exercise. I used to bench. It just doesn't appeal to me. But there is like a common, I don't know what it is. Like you see some people put their back flat on the bench. Some people have this huge, insane arch in their back on the bench. Talk to me about like, what is the proper bench positioning for like, I'm sure it's different for like someone who's like trying to seriously compete versus someone who's just like, I do bench when I go to the gym. Like, what's the difference there?
Yeah. Well, like the thing with the arching, everybody should have a back arch. Like, and that's not to like help you lift more weight or anything. That's just a safety thing and making sure that you're engaging the correct muscle. The back arch is because you're pinching your shoulder blades to the back of the bench and you're pushing your chest out. So you're able to engage the correct chest muscles. Like if you're completely flat too, that's also, again, when we're talking about the spine, like that's putting a ton of pressure if you weren't doing that on your neck, which is the base of your spine. And you see, again, I'm like using myself, but you see people start to lift their like shoulders up to their ears and try to bench it up. Like you're not engaging your chest there like whatsoever. That's all on the neck and the spine and those things. I was taught a cue that helps me a lot earlier is to think less of like, you need to have an arch and more of when you're setting up, you have your shoulder blades squeezed, you have your chest lifted up, but pushing all of your air into your lats versus thinking about trying to get this big arch. Naturally, when you're pushing air into the lats, your back is just kind of going to naturally arch. Like it's just kind of going to happen. You don't need to think about it too much. But again, it's just like if you want to use the correct muscles in a bench and do it safely, there should be somewhat of a little arch there.
Yeah,
You're better than me because my cues are a little more vulgar. Like breathe into your balls. That was one of them. Or squeeze the tampon.
Of course, we have to go
those.
there.
We have those too. We have all of those, but I'm like, I can't say that to everybody. I don't know how they'll respond, but at the gyms, we had all sorts of weird stuff.
It's also interesting. Like I've always told clients, like I don't bench much, but I do have clients do bench. I know like people love it. It well-rounded exercise, workouts, whatever. I've told people, like, people think bench is an upper body movement, but it's really a full body movement. Like, you should feel your hamstrings engaging, your glutes engaging, your core engaging. If you're doing it right, your whole body is, like, lit up.
Yes. Yeah. I actually, the other day, my low back was feeling kind of, like, weird after deadlifts earlier this week. So we had bench the next day, and I asked my coach if I could do floor press instead, because it's using, if you're doing it on the floor, you're not able to, like, put your feet down and drive through the floor, get your energy there. So it was better on my low back and my back, because I was like, knowing if you're going to do a regular bench press, it's a full body movement. That's why it's a compound lift. It's one of the big three because it's a full body movement. So I made that change because, yeah, you need to have your touch points to think about with your bench are like your shoulder blades, the top of the back, your glutes, and your feet. And you push through the ground. It's a lot more that goes into it, but you like push through the ground. It was basically explained to me, like, some people have their heels down when they bench. It's different for everybody, but I personally don't. So I would push through my big toe. I was explained to me, like, you want to think about you're trying to push your heel down into the ground as much as you can without actually doing it. And that's going to cause you to feel energy come through the quads, the glutes, the core. It was also explained to me as with the core, Dave Tate actually taught me this. I know we were talking about him earlier, Joey. He like broke down the bench for me and taught me like all this stuff. When you're pushing out your core, you want to think about you're trying to make your belly as like fat as possible and pushing it out without like completely, losing all the air, but like pushing out against your stomach as much as you possibly can and try to be like as fat as possible. That's what he said. So then it turns into a full body lift. Like you're thinking about all of these moving parts while you're doing that.
Love it. That's like a soda can. Like be like a soda can, son. And real quick, can I ask you, can we warm up with bench with some of these? Is that some of these, do a set and then just do this couple,
Well, you should explain to the listener what some of these is.
It's some of these, but it's like basically a half-ass scarecrow kind of warm-up thing where I'm doing like I'm hugging myself and then reaching behind.
He's just flailing his arms is what's happening. Like he's trying to wave down his grandma. We're over here.
If you wanted to, I guess. I don't know how much that would do, but like if you want to, anybody could do anything. I'll do those sometimes like in between sets a little bit, but that's already when I'm like well into my workout just to keep things loose.
Hallie, I want to talk breathing with you. I want to talk periodization with you. I want to talk spinal mechanics with you, but we'll do some overrated, underrated. Maybe we'll have you on another time, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, you came up with an amazing list. You should kick us off.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I actually really do get so excited about talking about just like power lifting. I love it. So we'll have you back because I know we're like running out of time here, but overrated, underrated. My first thing on the list that we made was lifting shoes. And just to tell our listeners, a lifting shoe is a shoe that you'll see powerlifters wearing, that it's like a wooden block in the heel that elevates the heel, and it allows you to get some more ankle mobility if you're lacking in ankle mobility. Joey's showing us his lifting shoes now. Beautiful, Joey. Thank you for the demo. So are they overrated, underrated? I personally have never worn them.
Yeah, I got them. I didn't use them like ever, and then I like got them because I was like, I'm gonna splurge and get all this stuff. And like there's definitely you have to like learn how to use them because they do feel weird. They like feel like you're like, you can't really walk in them. They feel like you're like walking on like blocks. Exactly what you said. I think there's a time and a place for them, but I do know like some people that will like buy them and then they think that it's going to make them like the super stronger, like way stronger and all of this. And they're like using like equipment to like compensate for the fact that they just need to work on their technique. So I think they're a little overrated in that sense. They do work really well for some people, but like I wore them and now I've gone back to just like wearing my flat shoes because I just feel like they work well for me and my ankle mobility is fine. If you like struggle with ankle mobility, sometimes it's good too because you can like sink in better. But I don't know. I think they're a little overrated if just like because not everybody needs them.
I'm with you.
Okay, how about a lifting belt, even though they try to make themselves as big as they can in their stomach? Overrated, underrated?
Okay, overrated for like, I meant to say, if I said underrated for the lifting shoes, I meant overrated.
No, so you said overrated.
Okay,
you said overrated, you're good.
I kind of think overrated for the same reason. I'm saying that as someone that has my belt, like my lever belt, my like legit belt. I love it. I will never go anywhere without it. I put a lot of money into it. But for the same reason of like people will, I think like deadlifts especially, people will like not work on their form at all and be like, I have this belt so I can lift a lot, and then they'll still have bad form. And it's also a learning curve too. Like you need to learn how to breathe properly into the belt. Like you can't just wear it and be like, that's it. So, and at least with my training, like my first powerlifting coach, I probably didn't wear a lifting belt with him for like 6 months into our training because we just wanted to make sure that my form and my technique and my bracing, like how your core is good. So when things get heavier, I like to utilize it. But I even still now with my training, if I know it's going to be a lighter squat day, I'm not going to wear it because I don't want to rely on it. So I think it can be overrated for the same reasons as the shoes.
Yeah, and I will say, I think just like if you're not like super into lifting, like you don't know a lot about lifting, you see people in the gym with their belts on, it's not back support. It's to help you brace, right? And it's like sometimes it's like maybe a crutch.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. That's why I'm like not like if you're just like a random person that's like working out, like you don't need that. Like just make sure that you can do everything well.
Yeah. Okay, this is my next overrated, underrated. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead in our list here because, okay, overhead presses. I personally, so with powerlifting, right, the big three are bench, deadlift, squat. But with like strongman, the big three are deadlift, squat, and overhead press. And to me, I'm like, okay, overhead press, that's so much more practical. It's so much more functional. And I stick with it. So what are your thoughts on overhead press?
It used to be in the powerlifting world. They got rid of it in 74, I think.
Yeah, because it was like a basic like powerlifting split is like you have bench day, squat day, deadlift day, there's overhead press day. Like that's a common one. My feelings have probably changed because of what I do now. Now I do like a lot of Olympic lifting, and actually today's workout we had like push and jerks. And I feel like severely behind with those because I am like terrified of putting things over my head because I just like never did it. Like, and I'm like, I don't understand how people are putting these crazy things over their head, and I'm doing it, but I definitely like am scared of those movements still. And when you're thinking about it too, just like, yeah, our shoulders, we're doing these movements a lot. So for like powerlifting, you know, I would do like incline bench press and those sort of stuff, and I think it's helpful. So maybe for like powerlifting, it's like it's definitely good to have in, but you know, maybe some people don't need that as much. I feel like for me with what I'm doing right now, it's very underrated because I definitely need to be. I wish I was doing more of them because now with all the other things I'm doing, I'm like I'm struggling.
Yeah, I mean, getting people doing overhead presses is like a hill I will die on. I personally think like people underrate it so much. Like I get so much benefit. Like my nervous system is like on fire when I'm doing like heavy overhead presses. Yeah. Joey, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on overhead press? Just real quick.
You need to do it. But my screen for that is your shoulder blades have to move effectively. And so there's a screen for that. Like the FMS calls it the reach behind. You need asymmetrical shoulders, but you need symmetrical shoulders ideally or within a range. And I don't want to go too much down, but if I have someone who's asymmetrical, that's totally fine. We'll just do an incline press or a landmine press. We'll find another angle to push overhead, even though it might not be directly overhead, but you need to train that movement pattern. And I think there's so many ways to skin the cat too. I do appreciate a good overhead press because I think it's more full body than a bench press because now you have to transfer force through the floor, through your stomach, and then up overhead.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem with it too, though, is people don't realize that. So like, I even feel like for me, it was really hard to understand that for a while. So I would be scared because I'd be like, I'm going to hurt myself. But it's because I wasn't understanding, like, you need to be pressed. The same thing with the bench we just talked about. You need to be doing all of that to be able to safely lift up.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, you want to throw out one more? I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw two in one real quick because I think you can answer these both because there was a hot second where these were pretty big. But the first one is smelling salts, and then the second one is Darian's lovely chalk. Overrated, underrated, salts and chalk.
Okay, well, again, I think like social media, like you see on social media, like the dudes with like their shoes and their belts and they're like smelling salts and then they're like going crazy in the gym and it's like, wow, it's this whole thing. If you're just like a person in the gym, you don't you really don't need to be doing that. I mean, if we had like really heavy days, like meet days, yeah, I'm like gonna use them. But also there have been times where I like squatted, and I smelled salts right before, and then I like couldn't see the whole time I was squatting. So I was like, like it's a lot. And I just don't think like that needs to be a thing, especially for just like an average gym goer. There's literally no reason that you need to do that at all. So even like sometimes powerlifters are using them a ton, and I'm like, man, like you can like just listen to a song and like hype you up. Like, I don't know, you don't like need to do that. I try to use them sparingly, so like maybe a little overrated there. But chalk, I will ride and die for chalk. I think it's underrated. Like I could not be doing what I do now if I didn't have it, especially now it's like so cold. Our gym doesn't have like heat or anything. So if you just like hold a barbell just like cold and stiff and like don't have anything there, it is such a horrible feeling. And like I said, I have this really bad callus right now that's been like ripped open. You probably shouldn't do this, but I'm just like, well, chalk it up. We're good to go.
Oh, I want to do one more real quick before we let you go, okay?
Okay.
Grunting, because some people do it, and man, maybe they don't need to do it. Give us some tips on grunting.
We were actually talking about this earlier in the gym. I told my like people that I was going on my company's podcast today about this. So I was like, I'm getting all pumped up for it. But we were kind of like making fun because there's this guy that like does it a lot. And everybody's like, hey man, like you really need to do that. I guess there's like sometimes sounds you like can't help but make. There's probably times I've made like a weird noise when I'm lifting, but like also like you're not like breathing correctly. I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of really unnecessary things, and like nobody cares how much weight you're lifting. Like you don't need to draw attention to yourself like that.
Oh yeah, I think about all the guys in the gym.
Thing. Like you just go into the gym and like lift and leave. Like it doesn't need to be a whole. It feels all of the things you're saying are like a performance.
Yeah, it's very performative. I really feel like that is why people think it hypes them up, is because it feels like a performance. It feels like all eyes are on them, and that's why they're doing it. But like you said, if you're grunting like that, your breathing is probably not correct. You're probably losing a lot of power because you're letting that awful sound out of your mouth.
I could tell you so many stories. I could tell you so many stories, crazy stories of things I've seen people do to get hyped up before they go into a lift. But you also, and if you go back to the top powerlifters in the world, if you watch any of their meets, they like go out, they lift the weight, and they leave. Like they're very stoic. They're very calm. So you take a look at like the Instagram stuff you see, but then take a look at the people actually performing at the top level, and they're doing very different things.
For sure.
Yeah, that's always funny seeing the pros and the average Joes do it. But Hallie, thank you so much. We're going to have you back 100%, but I want to ask you one last thing, and that's if you can give our listeners one little piece of advice or one most actionable item, what would it be?
That's really good. That's hard. What we talked about earlier, especially women, they're very like scared of lifting weights or doing these heavy lifts and doing all these things. But I would just want them to know, or just have faith in themselves. Like nothing bad is going to happen. Like these are all very beneficial movements. Strength training has so many more benefits beyond just getting like as strong or as jacked as humanly possible. Just again, we were talking about earlier, in your daily life, you're picking stuff up, putting things down. People with kids, they're carrying their kids around, or they have to lug around whatever. Like there's just so many helpful tools and techniques with lifting, and it doesn't have to be just one thing. Like we're talking about powerlifting and bench, squat, deadlift, and that's great, but like it's not a one size fits all thing. And I don't know, I don't see any downsides of strength training. Maybe there is, and it is. I think the world is changing. People are like becoming much more aware of how important strength training is, but I don't know, to not be scared of it or like to be intimidated by all of it too, because there are just a lot of people like us. We want to help you out. Like we want to make sure you know what we're doing, because there are so many benefits, and that's why powerlifting is cool too, because it's like so many benefits.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the reward far outweighs any possible risk that there is.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Hallie. Thank you so much for listening. We want to remind you, if you want to train with Hallie, click the link in the show notes. And as always, please try us out. If you haven't already, you get 2 weeks free. Again, that is all found in the show description.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.